Some people have parents that are sexual predators. Hi, my name is Dr. Natalie Jones. I'm a licensed psychotherapist, and full disclaimer on this video, it's definitely a sensitive topic, and so if you feel triggered by it, please feel free to scroll, save it, and come back to it for later. But I want to talk about a topic. I've been working with children of narcissistic parents, narcissistic and antisocial psychopaths and things like that for many years. And and I've worked in the corrections system and worked with inmates over a number of years as well. So one of the things that I don't really see talked about as much, but one of the things that I have experience in working with is children who have parents who are sexual predators. And this doesn't always come across overtly, I should say, in a way that, oh, my parent is convicted of a sex offense or something like that. It can come across in subtle ways too, or ways that maybe you might not even remember until you get to be an adult. So I'll go over some signs to look for in parents that can be sexual predators towards their children or towards even like grandchildren or other children as well. For one thing, I think a lot of times parents who are sexual predators are very heavily focused on your body, your physique, how you look, and a lot of times they will make either sexually inappropriate comments or just inappropriate comments about your body in general. They'll always be critiquing and criticizing it and hyper-focused on it, or even wanting to see it at a time that's inappropriate. So if like you're in the bathroom and you may find that your parent is always trying to look at you or walk in on you in the bathroom. There can also be a hyperfixation on nudity as well. And that could go both ways, as in terms of them wanting to see you nude or have you do things in the nude, or them being nude around you at times that are inappropriate, or forcing you to look at them or interact with them while they're doing so. And so I think that's a huge thing as well as that can also extend to your friends. So if you have friends over for a sleepover or things like that, there's a hyperfixation amongst your friends, or various stages of undress in front of your friends, trying to get your friends to look at them, to critique them, rate them. What do you think of me? How would you say that I look? In a way that's super flirty, age inappropriate flirtiness, I should say. So like that may be okay if that was two adults, but if you're asking a minor, that's totally inappropriate. To have those kind of conversations like that. Here's another way that I think a parent can be a predator, and they don't necessarily have to do anything towards you directly, but it's what their inactions that they do towards you indirectly. And this happens, I think, I can't tell you how many times I've seen this happen, is where like your parent, maybe your parents got divorced, your mom, your dad, whomever has a new boyfriend, girlfriend, and they've sort of moved on, or now they're dating, and they're exposing you to all of these adults that they date, or they're leaving their child in the care of people that they date, people that they don't necessarily know well, they haven't screened well, and that person then touches their child, or is sexually inappropriate towards their child, and the child does the right thing, and they disclose that to their parent, and their parent does nothing, or they continue to date or interact with this person, or they ostracize the child, they berate or beat the child, or become overly punitive towards the child, or they blame the child for that person who has that perverted behavior towards that child, that inappropriate behavior, I should say, towards that child. And so they become overly punitive, and that child is now seen as a threat, or is ostracized, or is ridiculed, or degraded even further, or they continue to allow that person to come around that child and have access to them, or they form this allegiance with the child. In my professional opinion, I think that the parent, although they didn't do anything, I actually think that parent, they didn't do anything directly, I should say, in terms of the sexual inappropriate behavior. Although they didn't commit the act, I think it's their inaction that actually makes them much more dangerous than the predator itself. And so I think this happens a lot, especially in families and things like that, where males are protected. But it can also happen a lot even with females too. And I think, and again, this is very common. I'm sure I've heard this a lot, where girls will talk about, like, their aunt or their grandparent or someone telling them to go upstairs and put on their clothes because men are coming over. And so I think that's an excellent example of how you know that the people that you're having in the vicinity of a child are inappropriate, but you're putting the child in the position to be able to take the blame or take the responsibility for a predator's inappropriate behavior. So that's another. And of course, one that a lot of people may be familiar with, of course, is the inappropriate touching, in where a parent, there was actually a post that I saw, and this is kind of what made me think of this. This post I saw, I think it was a couple of days ago, where there's like a family posing, and the father has his hands in between his two daughters' crotches, and that has seemed to go viral recently. I think that's a perfect example of inappropriate touching, or pushing the envelope to see how far they can get away with, what they can get away with in terms of like touching, or putting their hands in places that, some people may not catch per se at first glance, but then to a larger audience, people are going to catch that that's, again, sexually inappropriate, and look at like what's going on there. And that post has gone viral. And I think the most jaw-dropping thing about that post is that girl has her legs wide open, and her father's hands are there, and then the other girl, her legs aren't spread like that, but his hands are also in the same position. And so again, that's a good example of how, like, that's totally sexually inappropriate, and whoever took the photo maybe didn't catch it, mother or whatever maybe didn't catch it, but by and large, the larger audience saw it and caught it. But I think those are good examples. That's a good example of, like, sexually predatory behavior. Lastly, one thing that I'll mention that is sexually predatory behavior that may go unnoticed or may go unrecognized, is if your parent becomes controlling or hostile or aggressive when your child is dating, or age appropriate dating, or when there's like another male or female or whatever introduced to the picture that your child is actively dating. It's almost like a light switch. There's like a jealousy. There's this hyperfixation on wanting to monitor that relationship and wanting to check the person that they're dating, or even I've seen this recently too, where they want to do like surveillance of the person, of the young person that your child may be dating, and that's like surveillance in the school, surveillance of your dating and things like that. They're just hyper fixated and jealous, almost like a jealous, jilted lover about that. Hope that helps.